Thanks, everyone. Love this opportunity with a great panel here and also great audience. The topic is, one that we at Green Honchos have been hugely advocating, which is CX or customer experience. And what better than some iconic brands as well as some iconic enablers to be able to view their opinion on that. Especially in the last couple of years, there's been some pretty much seismic movement in this space of the customer experience and the customer journey. So I'd like to just pass that along, our panelists, and you can go in any order, probably just in the order in which we are seated. Maybe Avnish first. I think the question that I would have from a customer experience perspective is more from a product category perspective in terms of the shift of the consumer. What have you seen in the last 2-3 years, and how has Neeru's adapted to it, or what have you seen from your own experiences on the shift in the consumption pattern? I'll probably move this question around to half the panel at least to answer on.
So Naveen, I think I'm audible.
Yes, to me, yes.
So last 2 years have been very. It's a roller coaster ride. I think pandemic wasn't easy for all of us. And suddenly we realized so many things in terms of omni-channel, in terms of online, offline, and stores being shut. So many hindrances for a retail brand owner. So I think product point, Neeru's has always been a very merchandise-oriented brand. And coming from a space of ethnic, because I'm the loner in the ethnic category sitting over here, I think like we were speaking behind, every Friday you watch a movie, you want a similar dress to be there in your house. So that is the aspiration of a customer. But how will that retailer deliver you that in that mammoth speed of time? So that was a challenge for us. Seasonal merchandise, I think we all work with a format called OTBs that are there. So I don't know how much open to buy was there for everybody. I don't know how we all calculated that, because seasonal merchandise became a big issue for all of us during these 2-3 years time. But I think what we saw in the last quarter in October, November, December, it's been very positive, and the kind of trend, I think the kind of growth in terms of weddings, functions, events, travel, people were all back on track. And once everything is back on track, people are again back to your stores. They want everything in the same capacity as they had before COVID. So I think the only big change from my category, I could say, is more of value format, because we as Neeru sell from a 500 rupee kurti to a 5 lakh rupee lehenga. So now we have seen the traction of people asking more on the value side of the chain. So if suppose anybody could afford a 50,000 sari, today she wants to check out something that is there in about a 10 to 20,000 of range. So we had to work a lot on the value side of our business. And of course, the fast fashion, which is, I think everybody sitting here has one fast fashion category in their brand. So for us, it's all the kurtas that we do. So everything below 5,000 in terms of kurtas, that was taking a lot of traction in these 2-3 years time. So I think that's one product part from our side.
Excellent. Thanks for those inputs. Both of us are on the enabler side of this, so you from Shopify. From that angle, what consumption shift we were discussing about categories and other things, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I guess for us, the customer is the merchant. We're here to make commerce better for everyone. And of course, we saw dramatic growth through the pandemic. But also, we saw the needs of various merchants at various stages be very different, right? I think one of the things that happened in India, at least, was that e-commerce by itself became so big that categories that you did not take seriously as spaces for D2C brands even 2 years back suddenly opened up for D2C brands. Our process and path in enabling that was to extend longer trials for merchants to find their feet, to figure out how to use us, to find the right partner. It was very exciting to see that. And even today, category I often use as an example is costume jewelry. I used to be in e-commerce on the platform side. I've run it. I don't think anyone took it seriously 3 years back. Today, we see 100 crore brands that are entirely D2C on our platform delivering on this category, right? So I feel like this is only going to go on. Of course, D2C is blowing up, but actually new categories, creating white spaces for new brands is something that we've been helping those kinds of merchants. The second big thing we've seen is on the traditional side. So I feel like there's no enterprise in India today who is not taking their own website seriously for commerce.
Got it.
I think everyone recognizes that e-commerce is here to stay, but everyone also recognizes that your own website is as important as any other channel. I think that's happened for a couple of reasons. People realize that consumers are coming here to discover you, so they're not coming here to just find a store. So what we do to help that journey is really important. People sort of check out your assortment. You know, how you deliver that customer experience has become very important. You know, people want to see, okay, in the nearby store, is my size available before they come in to try it, right? Tomorrow they'll probably want to book an appointment to come and try it. So those experiences are becoming very important because brands are taking their own website very seriously.
Sure, sure. So thanks for representing the e-commerce D2C part of that discussion and question here. I think the next four would probably be more on the fashion side. So, you know, I would like to bring in Pankaj at this point, but I would also make a note to be able to get the opportunity to celebrate the big investment that has been received by Clovia. I think it's a great moment for everyone to celebrate here. Congratulations, Pankaj. So, yeah, Pankaj from Clovia. Your thoughts on category, movement, you know, and the consumer?
So one very interesting thing that we saw was that, you know, we've always been a bridge to premium brand, right? And our whole thought process was that, you know, so we always thought that the success of our business or the success of what we are planning or intending to do was, how can you, you know, onboard more and more people who are in the smaller towns into a category which is always, you know, assumed that it's going to be very unstructured or unorganized, what people would say, right? Into a more organized, into a more international, you know, kind of an exposure that the people would have. So prior to the pandemic, the number used to be around 40 to 45%, you know, hovering between tier 2 tier 3 towns. The same number post-pandemic is 63% for us now, right? So 63% of my customers is from the smaller towns. And there also the tier 2 was constant. The actual shift was from tier 1 to tier 3.
Okay.
And I think that's where the real crux of what I have seen as, you know, the change of the pandemic is. You know, the people who were waiting on the sidelines to see whether they should dip their feet, you know, into the whole brand play via this D2C channel that was evolving, you know, they had no option but to kind of
Correct.
just dip their feet. And the moment they did that, they said, boss, this is lukewarm, this is fun. and I think then they jumped right in. So I think that has been phenomenal in terms of the consumption changes.
Super. Thanks for your inputs. So Rahul, please, with your experience from Latin quarters as the brand being represented, what are your thoughts on that? I'm sure every brand sees it in different cuts. And you were talking about how there are global trends, but how there are certain things that fit versus not for you as a strategy.
Yeah, so how we were mentioning, what we were talking about is that just because something works globally doesn't make it's not going to work in India, right? So for us, also the customer experience was about making sure we are local, so we take the best of global fashion, but we make sure we're selling it to our consumer who understands that fashion. And because the tier 2, tier 3 business has really increased over the past few years, it's more difficult to make them understand it. It would be easier for us to make people in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore understand what global fashion is, but going to smaller towns, we still have to be concerned about what the colors they like, you know, what kind of fits they like, what kind of fashion they like. So that has been a good, challenging experience over the past few years, understanding that, improvising to that, yet sticking to your core. I remember once after the first lockdown, we were brainstorming what to do, how to approach the consumer, and a lot of people said, you know, work from home is going to be big, loungewear is going to be big, so you should focus on that. And I think every brand tried to do that. Not many were successful, but they just felt that it is a need of the hour, so everyone should do it. And we tried to do it, again, not very successful, but we stuck to what we were known for, and we had certain challenges initially, but now that the market is back, I think we are glad that we stuck to our identity and didn't deviate too much from the product line, from our price points, and from the entire consumer experience.
Excellent. No, much appreciate your candid inputs there. We'll bring in Sanjay, representing the iconic brand over the past few decades, Spiker. So I'm sure you've been asked this question before in the last year, maybe by me before as well, but please, your thoughts on this.
So I think I take off from where Rahul left. So pandemic actually made a lot of people think through exactly what consumers want. And the most obvious answer was that because there are difficult times ahead and they found themselves also in some serious trouble, a lot of people will gravitate towards spending lesser on probably products that we kind of manufacture or deal in. Well, I feel that they did spend lesser, but did they kind of compromise on what they wanted in terms of the product and the quality and so on and so forth? So there the answer that I got to myself was no. What I believed in was that the people who have risen the ranks and stepped up for a better product, whether it's from a brand perspective also or from a design perspective, I don't think they would ever want to descale themselves. And so we actually took off from there, and in the last 2 years, my product and my design team kind of delivered probably the best products that we have ever done in the last 30 years. Okay. And we actually raised the bar so high on the product delivery because we were very sure that the business that we find ourselves in, you really can't compromise on the product. And there would be as many and more customers who will seek you out for the same. So as a brand, we felt that the kind of work that we do, we are not suited to really do a value offering, because there are some times that you don't like to do things and you eventually end up not doing them as well. So we stayed away from doing value. We stuck to what we were doing. And this is exactly what has been with Spiker earlier also. I mean, people who know Spiker for a while, they would know that we have been through some tumultuous times ourselves some 10 years back. And those years also, I think we'd never let the product down. And that's precisely why I feel as a brand, we built a very strong foundation. And this is on the back of a great product. And so we didn't want to leave it at all, at the mercy of some whims. And we are very glad that what we did. Today also, I'm very glad and very happy to say that everything that Spiker does is actually to reach out and give probably the best possible value for the customer for whatever monies that we charge. And that's worked for us.
Excellent. So Sahil, Da Milano, another iconic brand in the premium segment. So your take in terms of the consumption pattern and either the product mix change in the last 2 years will be different from that premium standpoint, or is it similar?
Honestly, we as human beings, we get complacent, and this last 2 years have really made us, the outlook has been changed, and it has really made us think differently. And what we have, what these sudden lockdowns and unlock and, what we learned is that if you have, it's taught us how do you manage and get the throughput with very lean inventories. And that is something which really we learned that, in lean inventories also you can get those kind of sales. We, in fact, in few geographies, we delivered 30 to 40% growth, which was quite unimaginable, which definitely, which taught us that there is a consumer which consumers don't wait. So we are all social. We want to go out and we want to pamper ourselves. So I feel that, and coming from luxury, when dealing with high price points, I feel there has been a big pent-up demand, and that's what has led to this surge in growth. And of course, there has been another point which I would like to stress upon is content has become a very important factor. So where we used to do, like, let's say 2 campaign shoots in a year, we now are doing about 6 campaign shoots in a year. So content is becoming a key play.
So yeah, I'll just take that cue for another couple of follow-up questions on the consumption pattern. Because now you bring in the consumer side. A lot of what we were hearing was from the merchandise planning side of it. Now coming to the consumer side of it, I think there's a part in the agenda itself where we're talking about want-based versus need-based purchases from the consumer side. If any couple of you want to come in on that, what have you seen in that, especially in this last 2 years? Is it more impulse-based purchases versus need-based purchases versus habit that have actually changed more in this transition? I think Shopify would be a good.
Sure. More than want versus need, one of the things we've seen more and more, maybe because people were just spending more time on their phone screens, is people are really taking the time to discover small brands. They enjoy the experience. To Sahil's point, they enjoy sort of reading content. They want to see the video. So we've seen this shift in, especially in lifestyle categories, like we see more and more brands being born, yes, but the brands we had even pre-pandemic, right, they've grown disproportionately, not just because of e-commerce, but because people are sort of making more conscious choices after spending a lot of time on discovery. So I guess that falls in the want bucket, but it also falls in this bucket of sort of, it's much easier to spend time. Part of the experience of buying is now getting delivered like this, right?
I'll in fact rather second that, because so we come from a category which is a need based, right? I mean, it's an essentials, even though the government didn't accept it as essential during the pandemic. But one thing that exactly what you said, the customer is getting a lot more involved in the product now. I think the consumption is and it's not about making just a conscious decision to buy. I think it's just about consumption. It's just about getting involved. It's just about the whole education experience that they've started to do. And it's a dream come true for people like us who always wanted the customer to be more educated, right? Yeah. I mean, now they want to be educated because they're available to consume content. And we're like, boss, now if I can just push the right content to them, it is a perfect place to be. So I think that actually you're absolutely right. It's a very phenomenal shift that has happened.
Excellent. No, great inputs there. Thank you. The one thing, since we are talking more on the CX side, is the word customer loyalty or customer retention. I think in the fashion space, the CLV is what really makes all the difference. But with this huge influx of new age brands or digital first brands coming in, I think the consumer is getting spoiled for choices, clearly. How does one differentiate their brands, extending from content into really, what are brands willing or wanting to work on to enhance the loyalty and retention of customers? What are you seeing from your side of a lot of your brands have been here for a long time, some even a decade, some even more. What do you think brings that stick factor for customers, whether it's at Neeru's or at Spiker? Any thoughts on that, please?
I think, Naveen, because like you said, we are like a legacy brand. We've been there in this space for about more than 3-4 decades now. And we've seen so many weathers like this, of course, pandemic being a very odd one out, but we've seen so much of disruption in this category, because when you talk about ethnic, every city has a king. There's one good player in every city. You go to Bombay, you'll find one. You come to Delhi, you'll find one. You go to Hyderabad, you'll find one. But it's very difficult in our space to actually make your category stand out and make a crowd of entire India as your loyal customer. So it's very challenging for a format like ethnic wear to get that done, because at times your mothers used to going to one tailor and one shop to buy a particular suit or sari, but suddenly seeing a new shop next door, she might not adapt to that. So what I think from a ethnic and overall fashion perspective, I think the engagement, what I think Pankaj spoke and what Sanjay also spoke, what even from Damilano, he mentioned about how engagement has to be repeated and how engagement has to be there on and off, which has to recollect your customer that, earlier we used to track footfalls, which is for the physical stores. But now how can we make them feel that we are online, we are offline, we are omni-channel is a word for a forum like us. Customer doesn't know what is an omni-channel. So we try to create our stores like warehouses and say we are available everywhere. So the more you interact and speak to your customer, the more guaranteed loyalty you're gaining from them. It's not just that I have a loyalty program and they'll come back to me. It's not that. So it's about engagement with your customer. The more you talk to them, the more they remember you, the more they come back. Although you're a legacy brand, you're a 5-year-old brand, or even if you're a 4-month-old startup, so you have to leave that imprint for a longer time within them.
Sure. No, great inputs. Yes, please.
So I think legacy is a baggage in these days, right? So I believe that the consumer that we are currently talking to is so exposed to things around him, and the whole world is coming to him or at his doorstep or rather on his phone itself. And so from that perspective, discovery has become a lot more easier. and more interesting for consumers. So from that perspective, it will be very, very difficult for us to really expect loyalty from a customer. I think it's an overrated word and term. If we also place ourselves in the shoes of the consumers, we also find ourselves trying out new things, whether it's in the F&B or any other space. So it has become all the more difficult for people, for brands, and for products to retain customers. Having said that, we still are a little better off because in denims, fits play a very big role in terms of retaining consumers. So very rarely we see people wanting to change their fits or try out more fits just because it's a new fit.
Sure.
You know, so that way there is a bit of cushion for brands like us. But if I look at it from a very general or a broader perspective, I think all of us need to be living for the day and not take it for granted that, you know, we have a customer and he's going to be with us for a long time. We have to really work hard on a daily basis.
Sure.
I keep looking at brands that are growing very fast on our platform, and I just want to share a couple of things that these guys do really well. First of all, loyalty is tough, right? It's really a buyer's market. It's very, very difficult. But I found that some brands do a great job of talking to customers between the first and the second purchase. And I feel that the difference is that they are actually thinking of their customers now as influencers, as product co-creators, right? So a D2C brand will put out a new product they're about to release on their Instagram channel and actually ask people who follow them to say, do you like it, do you not like it, do you think it's going to work, what more should it, have? Or I've seen like big brands, I think Sugar did this recently, one of our brands, they sent out their new product to their most loyal customers, right? And then they sort of presented it. So I think in true loyalty sense today, the definition of who a customer is itself has changed. He or she is more than a customer. They are your influencer, they are your product creators with you. The feedback loop has never been better. So if you listen to it, good brands do a great job of incorporating it in their cycles.
Sure. No. Thanks a ton. Got good contrarian views in one panel on that, and I think it's good to acknowledge the fact that loyalty may be a expectation that may be a bit overdone, and it is doing the right pieces in small bits better. But I also, heard Avnish bringing in the buzzword omni-channel, and also rightly following that up by saying the customer really, it's seamless for him. He doesn't really know all of this omni. It's more from the business side. And the first avatar of omni in India anyway is omni fulfillment. But in true testimony to this panel, I think we're really talking about omni experience. And that would be much more realistic for offline brands. And, from the number of brands and partners that we worked with, we've seen that, the omni implementation for every brand is still unique. Over years, no one has really been able to do it right or actually cookie cutter, because every business has its own method of how it wants to do it. And I think Bharati was saying that, omni is not the future, we are actually in that present. So would you like to extend that thought and maybe, get a couple of final thoughts on that omni buzzword, from a few of the panelists?
Yeah, I think in general we've all been talking omni, and maybe on panels like this for 5 or 6 years now. I feel post-pandemic it's truly the present. There's no saying that you're going to ship from your store 3 years from now. It's already happening. Many of our brands do it. I feel that my experience, and I've made many mistakes with omni, has been that truly thinking about omni actually starts with the people and the org. Till a brand's org does not embrace that e-commerce is actually a part of your business, and discovery in marketing has fundamentally moved online, you cannot fundamentally create an omni experience in your company, because true omni experiences affect every function, right? You change the way marketing is done, you change the way supply chain works, you change the way pricing and promotions work, you change the way inventory moves. So I would start with the org if I wanted to deliver a true omni experience. And I feel, having worked in a very traditional org before this, that many brands that have been around for many decades, and I think I was telling Sanjay this before we got on, don't realize the weapon they have, which is millions of customers they've already serviced. You have to find a way to use that. It is such a large funnel that even if 5% of it is useful, it is much more than what you're going to get from using online and performance marketing, right? A lot of brands don't realize, the traditional ones, they don't realize the power of that.
Yeah.
So I would start today with these two.
No,
on
absolutely.
Omni.
I just second that thought. Since we do a lot of performance marketing as well, we know you can only push the ball till a point and then it breaks. And that's where the brand love comes in. And we
Yeah.
do know for a fact over the last decade that brands with a higher offline reach, recall, or share of voice have a much higher conversion rate. And that, is showing itself much more right now in this day and age. Any thoughts, Pankaj, on omni-channel there?
I think there's just this one fundamental thing that, when somebody says, oh, you're an online brand, or you're an offline brand, or you're an EBO brand, I think a brand is a brand, right? And then there's a channel that gets involved. I think it's very important to decouple both. And because if you start to constrain, because there were e-commerce companies which said that we are going to be mobile app only, right? And then they said, boss, that's not happening, right? I mean, you have to go back to website. So I think this is something which I share with my team, and it might come off as factually incorrect in some ways, but when we are discussing this, the point of view is that if you're a brand, you have to find a way to reach out to the end customer, right? And any channel would work as long as the customer experience is not getting impacted, your gross margins are not getting impacted, your inventory and cash flow is managed in a certain way, right? As long as these 3-4 check boxes are checked, you should explore every channel. Sure. I think that should be the thought process. So when you do that, then you just unclutter this whole offline brand or online brand, thought process, and that's when you start to, declutter. I mean, we always thought we're going to be online only, right? And 2.5 years ago, we started experimenting properly with offline, and today, I mean, last month we opened 5 stores, and each store is turning profitable within 30 days.
Fantastic.
So we never thought that this is something for an online brand could happen, right? So I think the customer is very smart, but you're absolutely right. I think you have to just change everything about your organization. It cannot be a different vertical. That's for sure.
Sure.
Right. So just want to add to a point. I agree with him that we should look at omni-channel just as another way to do business. It shouldn't be given too much priority. It should not be given limited priority. It's just as much priority as any other distribution channel of yours would have. And just want to say something funny which I heard about omni-channel. They said omni-channel is like dating in high school. Everybody wants to do it. Everybody thinks the other guy is doing it. No one knows what it's about, but they all tell them that they are doing it. So it's the same thing amongst all our retailers. He's going to say, I'm doing it. I'm going to tell him he's doing it, but none of us know what is actually happening. So that kind of fits omni-channel and retail into one world.
Interesting thoughts. Yeah. So I guess we're in the last couple of minutes. I'll probably leave the final word to Sanjay here. Just any learnings for us, especially in the last 2-3 years. There are a lot of brands, brand owners, e-commerce heads, brand managers here, keeping the customer at the core. What's your feedback for everyone? Where should we, have our eye on the ball?
So I think we need to move with times, and we have to embrace what's happening around us. I think a lot people who have not been able to do that, somewhere I felt that they are withered away. Now, whether it's the omni experience, or it's embracing e-commerce in the right zone, or looking at e-commerce as a very critical component of our business. Does e-commerce and offline fight with each other? No. I think somewhere we all have to migrate to where the world is moving, and keep up with whatever our strengths are. I personally feel that we are always better off doing what we are good at, rather than trying and do things which probably it should not follow herd mentality. I think where we've kind of worked well is, and what you learned in the last few years at least, are these areas, and the most obvious one, which is really look at costs. I think bottom line preservation is going to be most critical and important for all of us, and especially if we have to take care of such events which are unforeseen. I mean, these are probably the few things that, though we were always knowing that these are critical, but COVID has brought all of this to the forefront and made us realize the real need to look at this so closely and minutely.
Thanks a ton. On that encouraging note, with your permission, we can draw this to a close. Thank you, everyone. And it's tough to get sandwiched in a post-lunch session, but we appreciate your patience. Thanks a ton, everyone. Bye-bye.